Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Janine and here you will find videos on motherhood, bit of style, bit of life, maybe some beauty, family life, vlogs, all that good stuff. So today I'm going to be sharing with you my labour and delivery story with my second baby, my little squishy, yummy, love him so much, baby Jude. I want to add in a little trigger warning for you guys. I am going to be talking in this video about my C-section experience, so some moments of this might be triggering for you, so I just want to put that out there and be clear. And obviously if it is, feel free to fast forward or switch this video off at any points. But these are just my personal experiences and what I went through. It's not necessarily a generic reflection on for everybody. Labour and delivery is a wonderful positive experience overall, but these are just my experiences that I'm sharing with you. My last video I spoke to you guys about our pregnancy experience, and I ended the video at the point where we were told that we needed to go back to the hospital the next day because our son Jude was going to be induced, and his birth was being brought forward because of the complications. If you guys aren't sure what I'm talking about, then I will leave a link somewhere up here to that video. Go back, check it out. There'll also be a link to that video in the description. But okay, so it was Saturday the 3rd of March 2018, so last year, and we knew we were obviously going to be having him hopefully that day because he was going to be induced. They told us to call in the morning to check when we should come into the hospital. They were going to give us a time. We called in the morning and they basically told us that they didn't have any space in the hospital for both me and Jude. They had a bed for me, but because Jude was being born, he's coming early, he was at 34 weeks exactly, they said that he needed to go into special baby care, and they didn't have any special care beds available, so they were calling around to neighbouring hospitals to see who could take us. So we live in Surrey, and they were calling hospitals in London, Kent and Sussex, which I'm not gonna lie, at that point I was starting to really freak out, because they told me that it could be that I would have him, I would have to stay in the hospital potentially, and then he would be moved to wherever they could find a special baby care bed in the country. She said to me initially they were looking London, Sussex and Kent, but it could be anywhere in the country. So I could be in the southeast and he could have to go all the way to Liverpool or Manchester or Bristol, somewhere random. And that made me really freak out. And I told them that I didn't actually want to come in there until they could guarantee a bed for us. They weren't happy with that, understandably, and the hospital were really insistent that we still come in because they wanted to monitor me, wanted to monitor him and check that everything was okay. So it was also snowing really heavily and the roads were a bit of a wreck, and we live in quite a country area, so it was a bit of a mission getting down to the hospital. But anyway, we drove down there, we went in, and straight away as soon as we got in, we got checked in, we asked what's going on with the bed situation. Is there a bed for the baby yet? Do you know where we're going to be? They still said they didn't know, but they wanted to monitor me. So I was feeling really anxious, and I'm not gonna lie, I was saying a prayer that a bed for both of us in the same place became available. Our first choice was to stay at our local hospital because it just made sense, but if we couldn't stay there, then I made a request for my preference to be to go to St George's in London, because that was not too far from where we live. It's where we had our first son Grayson, and it's close by to our family as well. Our family all live in London, so I felt if we weren't going to have the baby Jude closest to home, at least if we could be near our family in somewhere that's familiar to us, that would be okay. So then I was hooked up to the monitor. They had all the stuff, strapped onto my tummy, and they were monitoring Jude's heartbeat, mine, everything like that. oh gosh, actually, it's quite, I should have said at the beginning, it's quite emotional. Just I'm thinking about his birth, it's quite traumatic, if I'm honest. So when I'm thinking and talking about it, it does bring back quite strong emotions. So please bear with me, guys. It's a bit of a healing process as well for me. So they were strapped up to the monitor. They were monitoring, you know, everything on my tummy and stuff, his heartbeat, and while they were monitoring his heartbeat, they asked, the nurse came, the midwife, she came and asked me if I could feel any tightenings, and I said no, I can't feel a single tightening. And they were like, are you sure? I was like, yeah babes, I'm sure. I have had one baby before and I know a contraction when I feel one, and I ain't feeling nothing, not a thing. So they were like, okay, well, we just want to keep monitoring you because it seems like you're having some sort of tightenings, or there's something, certainly something going on. At this point, they hadn't given me any of the, you know, the kind of stuff they give you to induce the labour. They were just monitoring me. So I was a bit like, I don't really see how I'm having any tightenings at all. But then they came back and they said that they were noticing at certain points there was like certainly some kind of tightening going on, but I wasn't feeling it. But whenever that happened, Jude's heart rate had dipped, and then it came back up again. So they called the consultant over, and she was having a look and was checking and said, look, we're going to keep monitoring this. And she said to me, have you had anything to eat? And I was like, yeah, I just had pizza. Nobody told me not to eat. And she's like, okay, please don't eat anything else, because just in case you need to have a cesarean, we want to make sure that, you know, you're in a good position to do that. So I was like, okay. Initially, we were aiming for a vaginal birth, just like I had with Grayson, and that's what I've been preparing myself for. So when she was like, just in case you need a C-section, again, it was like my hair started to stand up, and I felt quite, you know, about it. For me, that it wasn't a negative thing to have a C-section necessarily, but it really wasn't what I wanted. So I thought, okay, and they were continuing to monitor me, and then it got a little bit awkward because they'd made this comment about the baby's heart rate, and nobody was coming back to tell us what was happening with regards to the bed situation, or what, you know, how his heart rate was going. And we were looking on the monitor at his heart rate now because they had raised it with us, and we were noticing little dips as well. And my husband started to get a little bit anxious, should I say, and he actually went and called back the midwife and was like, look, I'm noticing on the monitor the baby's heart rate dipping. Know what you guys are saying that you are coming to monitor her, but no one's actually here monitoring or has come and checked, because it was quite a while between when she last said it to us and when the consultant had come and looked and said, we're going to monitor you for a bit more. No one had come in between that time period and checked, and we'd seen that his heart rate had dipped a few times. Also, we hadn't had an update on what the bed situation was, and Lee, my husband, was like, and also what's going on with the beds, where are people, where are they going to be, basically, what are you guys doing about it? So she didn't know, so she got the consultant to come back, and the consultant came back and looked and said, yeah, you're definitely having lots of dips and stuff like that. We think you need to go no longer on this. It was just like the induction ward. We want you to go to the delivery suite, or no, to the labour ward, and we are going to monitor you more closely there, because we think you need more one-to-one monitoring, because we're just a bit concerned about the baby's heart rate. So again, I felt like anxiety again about it, and I felt quite uncomfortable. Like it didn't, nothing about it felt quite right and quite easy. Like it just didn't feel good. I felt anxious. So we were wheeled round to the other ward. A midwife came up and suggested that we have baby's clothes. We get baby's clothes out. If we had our, like, you know, hospital bag with us, and put them on the radiator to warm up, just in case baby needed to come quite urgently. And again, I'm like, why are they saying this? My induction with Gray took 4 days. 4 days to have him. So I was like, why would he come quickly? But I think at this point, the doctors and nurses were already feeling like I would need to have a C-section. But no, they hadn't really come out and said that to me. So we were then continuing to be monitored, and the consultant came in while we were in the other room and said, look, I want to get you prepped for a C-section because I've got concerns about baby's heart rate. It keeps dipping, and I feel that if we were going to go ahead with a vaginal delivery, it would put more pressure on baby's heart rate. So I really feel like we need a C-section. I said, okay, whatever's best for, that's safest, that's best for the baby, let's do. You know, we're going to do that. However, where are the beds? Like, what's going to happen? He then said he'd double check, and he came back and told us that they'd sorted the bed situation out. There was space for both me and the special care baby bed for Jude at the hospital, so that was a huge relief. So he was told us that we were going to go down for a C-section at like 7 o'clock that night, so we had quite a bit of time because it was earlier on in the day at this point. We just continued having like monitoring, etc., and we were like in the room, and I had the anaesthetist came round and said, look, we know we're not going down right now, you're quite a bit later on, but we want to prep you just in case we need to rush down an emergency. So they took my weights, they did all the stuff, and they put a IV line in my arm just to be ready, and she talked me through, you know, what it would be like having a C-section, etc. So Lee and I were just hanging out in the room, just chatting, and a midwife came running in really like unexpectedly, and she had in one hand she had some scrubs and in the other a razor. So it sounds a bit crazy, and she was just I was in a hospital gown at this point, and she was like, quick, you need to get undressed. And she's like, I need to shave you. And I was like, what? Why? And she's like, you're going down right now for surgery. You're going down now. And this was maybe around, I don't know, maybe 3:45, something like that. And she just hands my husband a pair of scrubs, tells him to put that on. He goes in the bathroom. She sits me up on the bed, pulls the gown off, starts shaving my nun, and rips off my bra. It was just the most intrusive, surreal moment. And I was like, what's happening? What's going on? I was so confused. I felt really anxious. Lee came out of the toilet, could see I was like a deer in like headlights, like, oh my gosh. He actually was amazing, like proper G man. He held me down. He said to the midwife, actually, can you just stop? And at this point, lots of other midwives and doctors were coming in the room, and there was all this chatter, but I didn't understand what was going on. He was like, can you all just stop and take a minute? And someone needs to explain what the heck's going on. We were told we were going at 7. What's going on? Someone get a doctor in here, someone that knows. He was super assertive and like to those guys. So they went and they got a doctor. The doctor came in and said, look, your baby's heart rate has dropped several times again. I'm really not happy with it. We want to get baby out right now. We don't see why we should leave this any longer. So we were like, okay. And within minutes, I was wheeled out of that room, down a corridor and into theatre. Lee was with me, and they basically said, we're gonna, you know, do the injection to give you, what's it called again, when they like numb your, like the, oh my god, I've just forgot the name of it. Oh no, they gave me the injection so I didn't feel anything. I can't remember what it's called. It's gonna come to me in a minute and I'll be like, ah. So yeah, I was like general local anaesthetic, so like, you know, couldn't really feel anything. I think she said from like here down, like my chest down, I wouldn't feel anything. And I had to kind of like bend over, like sit leaned over, and they like did it in my spine. The first time they did it, it didn't go in right, and it hurt, and it was so uncomfortable. I was like, oh my god, that doesn't feel right, take it off. So they had to take it out, and they did it again, and it went in okay. And then I had to lie down, and there were just so many people in the room. I found it really quite distressing and like upsetting and stressful because there were just so many of them. When we had Gray, it was like me, Lee and a midwife, and it was the most surreal, serene, tranquil as it can get when you're having a baby. But this time there were loads of people going, talking. It just felt off. So they obviously put the screen up, and then they did it. They made the incision, and they got him out. He came out and he cried straight away. I cried and I was like, Lee, is he okay? Is he okay? Please somebody tell me he's alright. They were like, he's perfectly fine, he's okay. He was so small as well, and they kind of tried to put him on my chest, but it was the most awkward kind of on my shoulder thing. But I couldn't hold him for very long because they had to take him away, which was really sad, and he had to go into special care. So I asked Lee to just go with him so that, not that he would know, but he wouldn't feel alone in any way, which is a bit silly. But anyway, so Lee went and stayed with him and, you know, had a lovely like little moment, you know, with him, which was great, while I stayed obviously in theatre so they could close up the incision. And now this is where it starts to get a little bit dicey. So while they're doing that, it felt really, really uncomfortable because there's just a lot of pressure, and I kept saying, I can feel a lot of pressure, this feels uncomfortable, it doesn't feel right, I don't like it. And they basically explained that my uterus was not contracting back down to size, and the doctor was having to physically squeeze and push my uterus back down to size, and they were like moving my organs around. Oh god, it's so like they were like moving my organs around to get everything back in place, and that was what all the pressure that I was feeling. They also said that there was a bleed that they couldn't stop, and that was causing a lot of pressure because they were trying to suture and stop the bleeding, and it was quite disconcerting because I could see the doctor looked a bit under pressure, and I could like tell something was off as well, and people were like talking around you, but obviously they're not really talking to you as much. The anaesthetist was amazing. She could see I was getting really anxious and frightened, and she came and sat with me, she held my hand and she stroked my face. It was the kindest woman in that moment. Like, her kindness just, it was a blessing, such a blessing. And she said, look, this is what's going on, was talking me through, and she said they're going to get the senior consultant in because they can't stop the bleeding and they can't get your uterus back down. So the senior consultant came in, and literally she must have been in there for about, I don't know, 6 minutes and she was like, it's all fine, it's fixed. She managed to stop the bleeding and get my uterus back down, to shrink back down. But the level of pressure that I was feeling before she came, I was obviously under anaesthetic, but the pressure was so intense that it was on the cusp of painful. So if I hadn't have had the anaesthetic, that would have been unbearable, and it was making me really anxious and feeling really distressed, and so it was a very stressful moment. And my husband was outside the room and was like, this is taking too long, and he was not allowed back in, and was basically asking what was happening, and he was feeling kind of worried too. But then everything obviously was sorted and fine. The senior doctor consultant, whatever she was, did an amazing job, and I was like closed up perfectly fine and was wheeled out of the theatre into recovery. And they said once I'd like gone through like an hour in recovery, I'd be able to go to special care and see Jude. So Lee was with me in the recovery room for quite a while, and it was like an hour or so, and then they took us around to see baby Jude. He was so tiny, like so small in the incubator. But then I looked around and I saw all the other babies that were in the special care who looked super poorly, and I realised that he had loads of colour, like obviously he's mixed race, but his cheeks were really pink and flushed, and compared to all the other babies in there was huge. He was absolutely massive, and I realised he's actually okay. He's a bit on the small side because he's premature, but he's fine. They told me that he was doing really well. He was doing so great, he was completely fine, like totally healthy, there were no problems, but they were just keeping him in there for observations, and that they expected him to move down a room. So they do the special baby care rooms in like levels of kind of need, or you know how intensive their requirements are, and they felt that by the next day he could move down a level, which was great. So yeah, we kind of got to spend a little bit of time with him in special baby care. I was exhausted and could barely kind of keep my head up, so I went to the recovery ward, and Lee stayed with me for the night there, where that was an interesting night. I got almost no sleep because obviously the general anaesthetic was still there, but when that wore off, it was painful. It was painful, my tummy. Obviously it's very swollen from the surgery. I had a catheter fitted, which was like not fun to get that out. And then I was also just in a lot of pain as well, so the nurses were great. They gave me some pain medication and just did everything they could really while I was in that recovery space to kind of make me comfortable, which was great. And then I just knew that the next day or later that day I was going to get to go back round to special baby care and see baby Jude. So guys, that pretty much brings me to the end of my labour and delivery story with Jude. Obviously my experience was having a C-section this time round, which was really different to having Gray when I had a vaginal birth for obvious reasons, but I just wanted to share those were just my personal experiences. So many people do go through C-sections and they're not as traumatic as mine. Also, they maybe you just don't find them as stressful as I found it. So that's just my experience. I will be doing another video coming up soon, which I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my recovery period after having Jude, and kind of talking about the experiences that I had there, just sharing that with you guys. So thank you so much for watching and putting up with my cold congestion. It's so annoying to like film a video in the cold. I sound all nasally, but thank you for putting up with it. And I will see you guys in my next video, and take care.